Welcome to the Joyful House. Thank you for joining me this afternoon. My name is Cynthia with Cynthia's Joyful Creations, and welcome to Once Upon a Storybook as we continue reading the Anne of Green Gables series. We are in the third book, Anne of the Island, and today we're going to be reading chapter 21, Roses of Yesterday, and then we're also going to be reading chapter 22, Spring and Anne Return to Green Gables. So if you will, sit back and relax and let's enjoy these two chapters, shall we? Chapter 21, Roses of Yesterday. The fortnight Anne went in Bolingbroke was a very pleasant one, with a little undercurrent of vague pain and dissatisfaction running through it whenever she thought about Gilbert. There was not much time, however, to think about him. Mount Holly, the beautiful old Gordon homestead, was a very gay place overrun by Phil's friends of both sexes. There was quite a bewildering succession of drives, dances, picnics, and boating parties, all expressively lumped together by Phil under the head of jamborees. Alec and Alonzo were so constantly on hand that Anne wondered if they ever did anything but dance attendance on that will-o'-the-wisp of a Phil. They were both nice, manly fellows, but Anne would not be drawn in any opinion as to which was the nicer. "And I depend so on you to help me make up my mind which of them I should promise to marry," mourned Phil. "You must do that for yourself. You are quite an expert at making up your mind as to whom other people should marry," retorted Anne rather caustically. "Oh, that's a very different thing," said Phil truly. But the sweetest incident of Anne's sojourn in Bolingbroke was the visit to her birthplace. The little shabby yellow house in an out-of-the-way street she had so often dreamed about. She looked at it with delighted eyes as she and Phil turned into the gate. "It's almost exactly as I've pictured it," she said. "There's no honeysuckle over the windows, but there is a lilac tree by the gate, and yes, there are the muslin curtains in the windows. How glad I am it is still painted yellow." A very tall, thin woman opened the door. "Yes, the Shirleys lived here 20 years ago," she said in answer to Anne's question. "They had it rented. I remember them. They both died of fever at once. It was a terrible sad. They left a baby. I guess it was dead long ago. It was a sickly thing. Old Thomas and his wife took it as if they hadn't had enough of their own." "It didn't die," said Anne, smiling. "I was that baby." "You don't say so! Why, you have grown!" exclaimed the woman, as if she were much surprised that Anne was not still a baby. "Come to look at you, I see the resemblance. You're complected like your pa. He had red hair. But you favor your ma in your eyes and your mouth. She was a nice little thing. My daughter went to school to her and was nigh crazy about her. They was buried in the one grave, and the school board put up a tombstone to them as a reward for faithful service. Will you come in?" "Will you let me go all over the house?" asked Anne eagerly. "Laws, yes, you can if you like. 'Twon't take you long. There ain't much of it. I kept at my man to build a new kitchen, but he ain't one of your hustlers. The parlor's in there, and there's 2 rooms upstairs. Just prowl about yourselves. I've got to see to the baby. The east room was the one that you were born in. I remember your ma saying she loved to see the sunrise, and I mind hearing that you was born just as the sun was rising and its light on your face was the first thing your ma saw." Anne went up the narrow stairs and into the little east room with a full heart. It was as a shrine to her. Here her mother had dreamed the exquisite happy dreams of anticipated motherhood. Here that red sunrise light had fallen over them both in the sacred hour of birth. Here her mother had died. Anne looked about her reverently, her eyes dim with tears. It was for her one of the jeweled hours of life that gleam radiantly forever in memory. Just to think of it, Mother was younger than I am now when I was born, she whispered. When Anne went downstairs, the lady of the house met her in the hall. She held out a dusty little packet tied with faded blue ribbon. Here's a bundle of old letters I found in the closet upstairs when I came here, she said. I don't know what they are. I never bothered to look at 'em. But the address on the top is Miss Bertha Willis, and that was your ma's maiden name. You can take 'em if you care to have 'em. Oh, thank you, cried Anne, clasping the packet rapturously. That was all that was in the house, said her hostess. The furniture was all sold to pay the doctor bills, and Mrs. Thomas got your ma's clothes and little things. I reckon they didn't last long among that drove of Thomas youngsters. They were destructive young animals, as I mind 'em. I haven't one thing that belonged to my mother, said Anne chokingly. I can never thank you enough for these letters. You're quite welcome, Laws, but your eyes is like your ma's. She could just about talk with hers. Your father was sort of homely, but awful nice. I mind hearing folks say when they was married that there never was two more people in love with each other. Poor creatures. They didn't live much longer, but they was awful happy while they was alive, and I suppose that counts for a good deal. Anne longed to get home to read her precious letters, but she made one little pilgrimage first. She went alone to the green corner of the old Bolingbroke cemetery where her father and mother were buried, and left on their grave the white flowers she carried. Then she hastened back to Mount Holly, shut herself up in her room, and read the letters. Some were written by her father, some by her mother. There were not many, only a dozen in all, for Walter and Bertha Shirley had not been often separated during their courtship. The letters were yellow and faded and dim, blurred with the touch of passing years. No profound words of wisdom were traced on the stained and wrinkled pages, but only lines of love and trust. The sweetness of forgotten things clung to them, the far-off fond imaginings of those long-dead lovers. Bertha Shirley had possessed the gift of writing letters which embodied the charming personality of the writer in words and thoughts that retained their beauty and fragrance after the lapse of time. The letters were tender, intimate, sacred. To Anne, the sweetest of all was the one written after her birth to the father on a brief absence. It was full of a proud young mother's accounts of baby, her cleverness, her brightness, her thousand sweetnesses. I love her best when she's asleep and better still when she is awake, Bertha Shirley had written in the postscript. Probably it was the last sentence she ever penned. The end was very near for her. This had been the most beautiful day of my life, Anne said to Phil that night. I found my father and mother. Those letters have made them real to me. I am not an orphan any longer. I feel as if I have opened a book and found roses of yesterday, sweet and beloved, between its leaves. Chapter 22. Spring and Anne return to Green Gables. The firelight shadows were dancing over the kitchen walls at Green Gables, for the spring evening was chilly. Through the open east window drifted in the subtle, sweet voices of the night. Marilla was sitting by the fire, at least in body. In spirit she was roaming olden ways with feet grown young. Of late, Marilla had thus spent many an hour when she thought she should have been knitting for the twins. I suppose I'm growing old, she said. Yet Marilla had changed but little in the past 9 years, save to grow something thinner and even more angular. There was a little more gray in the hair that was still twisted up in the same hard knot with 2 hairpins. Were they the same hairpins? Still stuck through it. But her expression was very different. The something about the mouth which had hinted at a sense of humor had developed wonderfully. Her eyes were gentler and milder, her smile more frequent and tender. Marilla was thinking of her whole past life, her cramped but not unhappy childhood, the jealousy, hidden dreams, and the blighted hopes of her girlhood, the long, gray, narrow, monotonous years of dull, middled life that followed, and the coming of Anne. the vivid, imaginative, impetuous child with her heart of love and her world of fancy, bringing with her color and warmth and radiance until the wilderness of existence had blossomed like the rose. Marilla felt that out of her 60 years, she had lived only the 9 that had followed the advent of Anne, and Anne would be home tomorrow night. The kitchen door opened, and Marilla looked up expecting to see Miss Lynde, and Anne stood before her, tall and starry-eyed, with her hands full of mayflowers and violets. "Anne Shirley!" exclaimed Marilla. For once in her life she was surprised out of her reserve. She caught her girl in her arms and crushed her and her flowers against her heart, kissing the bright hair and sweet face warmly. "I never looked for you till tomorrow night. How did you get from Cromarty?" "Walked, dearest of Marillas. Haven't I done it a score of times in the Queen's days? The mailman is to bring my trunk tomorrow. I just got homesick all at once and came a day early. And oh, I've had such a lovely walk in the May twilight. I stopped by the Barrens and picked these mayflowers. I came through Violet Vale, and it's just a big bowl full of violets now. The dear sky-tinted things. Smell them, Marilla. Drink them in." Marilla sniffed obligingly, but she was more interested in Anne than in drinking violets. "Sit down, child. You must be real tired. I'm going to get you some supper. There's a darling moonrise behind the hills tonight, Marilla, and oh, how the frogs sang me home from Cromarty. I do love the music of the frogs. It seems bound up with all of my happiest recollections of old spring evenings, and it always reminds me of the night I came here first. Do you remember it, Marilla?" "Well, yes," said Marilla with emphasis. "I'm not likely to forget it ever. They used to sing so madly in the marsh and brook that year. I would listen to them at my window in the dusk and wonder how they could seem so glad and so sad at the same time. Oh, but it's good to be home again. Redmond was splendid and Bolingbroke delightful, but Green Gables is home." "Gilbert isn't coming home this summer, I hear," said Marilla. "No." Something in Anne's tone made Marilla glance at her sharply, but Anne was apparently absorbed in arranging her violets in a bowl. "See, aren't they sweet?" she went on hurriedly. "The year is a book, isn't it, Marilla? Spring pages are written in mayflowers and violets, summers in roses, autumn in red maple leaves, and winter in holly and evergreen." "Did Gilbert do well in his examinations?" persisted Marilla. "Excellently well. He led his class. But where are the twins and Miss Lynde?" "Rachel and Dora are over at Mr. Harrison's. Davy is down at Bolter's. I think I hear him coming now." Davy burst in and saw Anne, stopped, and then hurled himself upon her with a joyful yell. "Oh, Anne, ain't I glad to see you. Say, Anne, I've grown 2 inches since last fall. Miss Lynde measured me with her tape today, and say, Anne, see my front tooth? It's gone. Miss Lynde tied one end of a string to it and the other end to the door, and then shut that door. I sold it to Milty for 2 cents. Milty's collecting teeth." "What in the world does he want teeth for?" asked Marilla. "To make a necklace for playing Indian chief," explained Davy, climbing upon Anne's lap. "He's got 15 already, and everybody else's has promised. There, so there's no use in the rest of us starting to collect too. I tell you, the Bolters are great business people." "Were you a good boy at Mrs. Bolter's?" asked Marilla severely. "Yes, but say, Marilla, I'm tired of being good." "You get tired of being bad much sooner, Davy boy," said Anne. "Well, it'd be fun while it lasted, wouldn't it?" persisted Davy. "I could be sorry for it afterwards, couldn't I?" "Being sorry wouldn't do away with the consequences of being bad, Davy. Don't you remember the Sunday last summer when you ran away from Sunday school? You told me then that being bad wasn't worthwhile. What were you and Milty doing today?" "Oh, we fished and chased the cat and hunted for eggs and yelled at the echo. There's a great echo in the bush beyond the Bolter barn. Say, what is echo, Anne? I want to know." Echo is a beautiful nymph, Davy, living far away in the woods and laughing at the world from among the hills. What does she look like? Her hair and eyes are dark, but her neck and arms are white as snow. No mortal can ever see how fair she is. She is fleeter than a deer, and that mocking voice of hers is all that we can know of her. You can hear her calling at night. You can hear her laughing under the stars, but you can never see her. She flies afar if you follow her and laughs at you always just over the next hill. Is that all true, Anne, or is it a whopper? Demanded Davy, stirring. Davy, said Anne despairingly, haven't you sense enough to distinguish between a fairy tale and a falsehood? Then what is it that sasses back from the bolter bush? I want to know, insisted Davy. When you are a little older, Davy, I'll explain it all to you. The mention of age evidently gave a new turn to Davy's thoughts, for after a few moments of reflection, he whispered solemnly, Anne, I'm going to be married. When? Asked Anne with equal solemnity. Oh, not until I grow up, of course. Well, that's a relief, Davy. Who is the lady? Stella Fletcher. She's in my class at school. And say, Anne, she's the prettiest girl you ever saw. If I die before I grow up, you keep an eye on her, won't you? Davy Keith, do stop talking such nonsense, said Marilla severely. 'Tis nonsense, protested Davy in an injured tone. She's my promised wife, and if I was to die, she'd be my promised widow, wouldn't she? And she hadn't got a soul to look after her except her old grandmother. Come and have your supper, Anne, said Marilla, and don't encourage that child in his absurd talk. Well, that is our 2 chapters for today. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed them as much as I did, and I look forward to meeting you here next Sunday as we continue reading our Anne of Green Gables series from Anne of the Island. Until then, be joyful, my friends, and be the joy in everything you do. Thank you and God bless.